You show up as this person, a complete person, having had, the argument with your significant other. You show up, you've had a death in the family recently, you're carrying the burdens of loss. And I think that if you're not, as Addie mentioned, listening and cueing in on the status of people, like their mindset, the things they're feeling in life, if you don't take time out as a leader, that you will miss out. And then subsequently, that leads to potential problems in the workplace. And the next thing you know, you're downgrading someone's performance. When in fact, if you had interceded and maybe listened 6 months ago, you could have offered them an alternate work schedule or done something that would have been helpful to them so that they could maintain dignity, maintain their presence, maintain their ability to contribute and be productive at work. Hey folks, MK Palmore here. Getting ready for this episode of Amplify, the Leadership Student 2.0 podcast. When I launched Apogee Global RMS, the idea was to bring enterprise risk management services in the way of cybersecurity and leadership skills, leadership development, talent acquisition, bring all of that to bear into the SMB space. And this podcast is an amplification of our focus on leadership as a tool for developing people and keeping them engaged and quite frankly, allowing them to grow into the people that they're supposed to be, supporting that in every way that you can. But again, at the core of this is the proficiency of enterprise risk management. My guests today for Amplified are one, a very close friend and colleague, someone that I've known since we were very young midshipmen together at the U.S. Naval Academy, David Zimmermann. The other, a new colleague that I recently met through David, Addie Rotem, who spent a number of years in service to his country, Israel. And our conversation, again, it's about leadership, of course, but they bring some very, very unique experiences on the enterprise risk management level and have both decided to team up and to begin producing a lecture series based upon their experiences. My goal, as always, is to bring folks to the discussion that I think might be enlightening to you as the audience, but also to spend some time engaging in important conversation. Enterprise risk management now should be the number one topic for global businesses. And so our discussions around leadership, our discussions about cybersecurity expertise, our discussions about executive search, talent acquisition, all the things that we do at Apogee Global should be relevant to my listeners and to the audience, certainly to the global workforce and global enterprise. So this conversation is an important one. I'm glad I was able to get both David and Addie into the virtual studio to have the conversation, and I actually think you are going to enjoy the convo. So enjoy. Welcome to this episode, and we'll see you guys on the back end here. Hey folks, this is MK Palmore. Welcome to this episode of Amplified, the Leadership Student 2.0 podcast. I try as best I can during the course of soliciting guests and bringing in folks that I think might be of interest to my listeners. I try and keep the guest from as broad a spectrum as I possibly can. If you've paid attention to Apogee Global since I launched this firm, we're an enterprise risk management firm. And obviously the topic of enterprise risk is near and dear to me. I spent a career doing everything from counterterrorism through cybersecurity, so both technical and physical aspects of enterprise risk. And today's guests, I think, help to amplify the focus and importance of this topic across the board. So Addie Rotem and Dave Zimmermann are both friends, and in Dave's instance, a friend for a very, very long time, former colleague as well, from both the Marines and the FBI. But what Dave and Addie bring to the table is a significant experience in the enterprise risk lanes. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about their backgrounds, and we're, of course, going to jump into the topic of leadership, all things leadership and what those experiences are like. And then I'm going to give Dave and Addie an opportunity to promote a lecture series that they have embarked upon that I think is super, super important for the geopolitical landscape at the moment. So Dave and Addie, welcome to Amplify, the Leadership Student 2.0.
Thank you.
I appreciate you both making time for this. Yeah, awesome. Hey, so for the benefit of our listeners, probably best to maybe give a brief overview of backgrounds real quick. Addy, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your career path and experiences.
Yeah. So first of all, MK, thank you very much for having us here. And my background, I've been about 25 years, a little bit more in the ISA, the Shin Bet in Israel, the Israeli Security Agency. So most of my life I spent in the counterterrorism era, also crisis management. I started as a field officer, so most of my life in the organization were really in tough places. Climbed to some senior positions in the organization. I also had a shift for a few years in the cyber area as well. I like to be in places which are not my comfort zone, even though I don't know if you can say about counterterrorism as a comfort zone, but I'd like to expand.
Understood.
Yeah. And the last 4 years, I was a senior member in the national negotiation team of Israel, which was prior the October 7th war. And of course, it was very busy after the war of October 7th. A very busy role until last year. So I spent a long time between Qatar and Egypt about the negotiation. And of course, this is the place I collaborated with my friend David Zimmermann, which I'll now end my role and hand it to Dave.
Thanks, Adi. Malcolm, thank you so much for having us. You also, besides being an FBI colleague and a fellow Marine officer, we went to the Naval Academy together and we served 4 years in the same company. So we go back quite a long way, and it's a privilege to be here. I'll start with the last tour I had in the FBI. I spent about 26 years, just under 26 years in the FBI, and I had the opportunity to work with Adi for 4 of those years when I was stationed in Tel Aviv as the counterterrorism supervisory special agent. Was there for October 7th, and that's, of course, where I spent a significant amount of time with Adi. Prior to that, I was in 2 FBI field offices working counterterrorism, and I was overseas in London for about 5 years. Before the FBI, I was a Marine officer for 5 years in the aviation area, F-18 backseater, and I had the opportunity to work for NASA for a couple of years. So in a nutshell, that's my professional career. Went to the Naval Academy with you, Malcolm, of course, and I got a master's degree in terrorism from King's College London. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Yeah, deeply experienced. I want to thank you both for your service to your respective countries, and of course, there's an allyship with Israel that I think makes coordinating and working together super easy. We're going to get to all of that. Again, enterprise risk management being the focus of our firm and what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. I want to start off, though, by talking about your backgrounds and your experiences developing the skills necessary to lead. Even when I think about enterprise risk today, counterterrorism, any area that has to do with physical safety or people safety or even technology, it appears to me that folks who excel in those backgrounds obviously are service oriented. Service, I think, is a huge component of what good leadership ultimately looks like. So maybe starting with Addy, can you talk a little bit about just overall maybe your philosophy of leadership and how you think about leading others? I'm sure you've had experiences with teams of various sizes and maybe even stood up a team or two on your own. Talk a little bit about your philosophy and how it is that you think about leading people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as you said, as you mentioned, especially in those areas when you lead people in a very complicated environment, under tremendous pressure sometimes, and sometimes, really risking life. So it's kind of leading in a very complicated situations. But the things, that I saw during those years, that there are some elements that when you lead with it, when you highlight those elements in your leading way, I think it's very effective. I'm talking about a few points and just say, first of all, I used to be very transparent, very clear, very fairness, let's put it this way, with my people. So they knew that when I'll talk to them, about something, it won't be that I will talk to them and then do something else behind the back. They know that we put everything on the table, especially with these kind of teams that you lead. You got to have confidence that you know the people, you know what they're doing, and they know that they can trust you. And one more element that I understood, very quickly, because, we're very oriented tasks. Got tasks, as the military, counterterrorism, you've got tasks all day. But what I've learned, very quickly, that what the people look from you is much more holistic point of view. So, for example, I'm talking about the mental and emotional well-being of the team. So it's not just doing what you need. You got to take care of your people in every aspect of their life. And this is something that I took, very carefully to do it with them. And I will just add one more thing, which is very, very important for the negotiation world, with which I dealt after, as I said. There's one element, which is very crucial when I have lectures about negotiation. I'm talking about active listening. This is something I've learned, throughout the years, because as managers, we like to give orders and to say what to do. But when you pay, attention to what people say, it changes sometimes all the picture. And as I say also in the lectures, there's two things that each one of us, individuals, will really look for. And it doesn't matter if you're, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, even vegans. We look for two things. People will hear us and will see us. And the moment you give it to your people and they understand that you're leading them, not just, by saying what you should do, but in all of the aspects, I think this is something that is very crucial in order to have the good environment for your team.
So you bring up a ton of good things there in your response to that question. Issues of trust, full transparency, the idea of taking care of the whole person and not just concentrating on their responsibilities in the workplace. I want to put that last point in a parking lot and maybe talk a little later about the differences between leading in service-oriented, especially public service, as opposed to leading in the corporate side of the house, because there is not an impression of taking care of a whole person in the corporate side of the house, which I think it's just different, right? I mean, we're talking about different environments. Oftentimes there's a misuse of familial terms in corporate environments, like the corporation is a family and things like that, which it's not. It's a workplace, which I think, so there's some barriers that get created. But those things that you touched on, I think were phenomenal. And we're going to pick some of those threads up here in a minute. But I want to give Dave an opportunity to jump in. I was actually witness to a good portion of Dave's transformation as a leader, but I'll let him give his own perspective, of course.
No, I appreciate it. I think Adi nailed it. I think there's a difference between managing and leading, as you mentioned, Malcolm, in the corporate world versus in the world that we all come from in the government. There's quite a difference between that managing and leading. You've got to take care of your people to get the mission accomplished, and Adi focuses on that. And he talks about listening, and I agree with that. The communication. It's not just about making sure that your goals and objectives are clear to your commander's intent is clear to your people, but you need to stop and listen to them. And one of the things that I discovered from my time as a leader from just the leadership laboratory of the Naval Academy, through the Marine Corps, through the FBI, is that you have to listen. And actually, complaining is important. When your people are complaining, they care. And that's important. And when they stop complaining, that's when you have to worry, because then they don't care. Then you have a real problem on your hands. So that listening part is vital. I do want to touch on what Adi said. Vegan, are you comparing vegan to major world religions?
It was for you, Dave. It was for you. Yeah.
I love it. But no, I think that communication, setting the example, setting expectations, that's one thing that I think as a young leader, you've got the book smarts and you have an understanding of what leadership's supposed to look like, but you don't have that job experience. You don't have that credibility. In the Marine Corps, we call it MOS credibility. If you're an infantry officer, you don't have the time in the infantry. When you're a second lieutenant, that maybe some of your senior enlisted do, or when you're an aviator, you don't have time in the cockpit like some of your seniors do. So you have to just do what you can, set the example, be fit, make sure your uniform looks good. But as time goes on and you become an experienced professional, having that credibility and reputation of knowing your job, and then that exudes confidence, and your people see that, and they know that they can trust that the decisions you're making are because you've been there and you've seen that, you've done that, you've had that experience before. So I think that job knowledge is also something very important to have for an experienced leader, because it gives that credibility. So I think, we could talk about leadership for days, but those are some of the things that, in my experience, are vital. That job knowledge, communication back and forward, listening, and setting the example.
So I'm going to ask you both to be a bit reflective here for a second. I personally feel like I am a different leader today at the age of 56 than I was when I was 18. I mean, my understanding not only of leadership, but of people, of circumstance, the importance of certain things when engaged in the discipline of leadership have transformed for me over time. And I assume that is the case for anyone who spends time reflecting on their development as a leader. For you both, what's something that maybe clicked for you midterm that you've taken with you into this stage of leadership that maybe you didn't have as a young leader? Something that maybe you missed, or it finally clicks for you, and you're like, wow, that's what this is about. It's not about this thing that I thought it was about, hitting the time schedules and showing up on time and doing X, Y, and Z. It's about this. For you both, is there one thing maybe that stands out that's a part of your leadership fabric that maybe wasn't there early on?
Yeah, I can start and say, when I was at my early years, let's say leadership, I was very much just tasks oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I saw everything like, just giving, orders. And of course, it's related to to where I grew up in the organization, as I said, field officer, etc. But this is what was really my state of mind. And throughout the years, I understood that I got to be more tolerated for other things. It's maybe coming with the age as well, when you understand not everybody should do things the way you do it. And you got to understand that it's okay when people do a different way to be more tolerate. And I shifted it a bit from control to trust. Since I'm, picking my people very carefully to my teams, Dave knows a few of them. So this is like my barrier, my biggest barrier. But who comes to the team, I feel very comfortable with him. So I shifted it, as I said, from being free control, that everything should be done the way I do it, to much more be, to having compromise. It's not about the missions, but about the way that people will do it. And I think it affected, the team, because it makes the environment much more, let's say, even nice, to work with, and not just according to the rules or to orders, which, it brings some other atmosphere to the team.
So, Adi, I might have to co-opt that phrase from you, because you just coined something, from control to trust. I see a blog coming on for me personally, but I like the way you describe that. Dave, what are your thoughts here?
He stole it from me. Trust, and then I'm not talking about integrity trust. That's vital. That's uncompromising.
Yeah.
As a leader, you always have to have integrity, and once it's gone, it's gone. But trusting that your people can get the job done, delegating that authority down, that was something that took me some time to be comfortable with, not micromanaging, knowing that the right people are on the team, that you helped select those people, and that you helped train the people that you maybe even didn't select, and trusting that they might have a different way of doing things. As long as you give them that commander's intent and they get to that end goal that you want, that's the most important thing. And oftentimes, more than often, they'll get there in a better way than you even thought was possible. So that trusting of your subordinates to get the job done, that took some time, I think, to get used to. But that was a leadership lesson that you learned through experience.
Yeah, I've seen many a leader get tripped up on this idea of trying to control how things get accomplished, and I think that over time we all, or at least the hope is, if you're paying attention, the hope is that you begin to place emphasis on different things and less emphasis on other things. And I think that as you mature, there's definitely a component of sort of letting go that control narrative around how things get accomplished, and you become much more interested in letting people sort of operate in a fashion that's germane to them, helpful to them in terms of their productivity. And actually, the lesson that you learn is people are actually much more productive if you don't control the sort of granular details as to how things get accomplished. So definitely a lesson to be picked up.
Yeah.
What about sticky experiences? I've often thought that, failure is a great teacher, and things stick with you. In an anonymized fashion, have either of you experienced something that you thought was just a game changer for you, both maybe life-wise, but also from a leadership standpoint, that has just not only impacted you, but just stays with you to this day as a learning lesson? And it can certainly be a failure. I throw the term failure out, pretty frequently, only because I believe we learn much more through failure than we do from success any day of the week. When you fail at something, even if it's only a handful of things, like that sticks with you. It's like you can't even get rid of it if you wanted to. So why not learn from it? Any thoughts from either of you on maybe challenging situations that you really took some lessons away from?
I can definitely, when you ask it, the first thing that comes to me is the cyber area that as I said, for a few years, I switched to a place, to a theme that I didn't know much about it. As I said, I grew in other places, and suddenly to come to a place when you don't know, because I was like somebody who knows a lot in what I was specialized at, and suddenly to have a shift to some area that you're not the most specialist about it, was very challenging. And what I've learned, I did a mistake there. I was very focusing about, I needed to build a new department there. And I was very focusing about what needed to do with my people, with my department, how to build it, how to affect those people, how to recruit them, etc. What I didn't pay attention is to my colleagues on the right and on the left, senior managers like me, that I didn't realize that I'm becoming as a threat, even though I didn't have any intention, to be a threat to anybody. So it took me a while to understand that if I want, figure it out with my colleagues, no matter how good I will do with my department, I will fail. It took me some time. And then what I did, I shifted into sitting with them, like with each one of my colleagues. First of all, as I said, active listening and tactical empathy. This is from the negotiation work, but I really sat with them, let them, put on the table, like say what's bothering you, to hear from them what they see as a threat. And then, to highlight for them what's the benefits that they're going to take out of my new department, that I'm not going to take anything from them. I'm just going to put extra in their benefits. So I failed for some time, and I felt it. It was good that I had the opportunity, to fix it during the time, but it was a great lesson for me, especially, as I said, were new places that you are not the one that knows everything over there, and you're very fresh over there. So this is my experience and it went, on with me later all along the road.
Dave?
Yeah, I'll say in my my early days as a Marine officer, learning to be compassionate was something that was a slap in the face. I'll tell a quick story, Malcolm. You'll appreciate this. I remember running with you at the Naval Academy. We'd run the perimeter and have these long talks, and you wanted to be a logistician in the Marine Corps, and I wanted to be an aviator. And it ends up, we would make fun of each other all the time. And you ended up being a logistician at an air squadron. I ended up being in the logistics office at my training squadron. So fate has that way of working out. But in my logistics role, I remember as a young lieutenant at a senior enlisted, and we had safety regulations in the squadron. You had to wear a helmet around some of this big equipment. And I remember seeing him and saying, "Hey, don't forget your helmets. Don't forget your helmet." And after about 3 times, I remember pulling him aside and I thought, okay, I'm gonna be hard. I'm gonna be a Marine officer. I'm gonna be hard on him. And I realized uh, I was experimenting, and it was the wrong thing to do. I wasn't compassionate. I didn't listen to him, and I set that relationship back a little bit, and I had to rebuild it. And I took that lesson through my Marine Corps career, and of course through my FBI career, and always had more compassion when dealing with people and trying to understand why they were making decisions they were making. Um, so that was a lesson that was hard to learn early on. Instead of being a compassionate leader, I was trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be, a hard ass lieutenant. Not a good decision. Something I've regretted, but something I corrected and was able to be, I think, an effective leader the rest of my Marine Corps career, and of course in the FBI. So that's my story about an early lesson that I was able to correct.
So interestingly enough, I think that I think you both have leaned into an aspect of leadership. I have to say has been a huge learning point for me. Dave, you used the term compassion. I use the term empathy nowadays, only because I do not recall an instance in the Marines, certainly not during our time in Annapolis, and maybe even my early days in the FBI. I don't remember a focus around being an empathetic leader. It wasn't something we were taught. I honestly, it's interesting because if you've been paying attention, I know that the Marine Corps just recently, I think within the past year, has included the term empathy in its leadership traits as a component. Which I think is super, super interesting and an indication of the times. And I remember distinctly it not being a portion of how we were taught. It's like mission, 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 take care of your people. But take care of your people only in that you are going to accomplish that mission that's been assigned to you. And the things like being compassionate, as Addie mentioned at the top of the recording, this idea of taking care of the whole person. Those are things I think that become much, much more important to you over time. And you recognize that people show up at work and they don't leave behind their personal lives when they show up. I mean, you show up as this person, a complete person, having had, the argument with your significant other. You show up, you've had a death in the family recently, you're carrying the burdens of loss. Maybe you're under some kind of strain financially. You bring those kinds of things into work. And I think that if you're not, as Addie mentioned, listening and cueing in on like the status of people, like their mindset and where the things they're feeling in life, if you don't take time out as a leader to take a tab on where people are in those respects, that you will miss out. And then subsequently that leads to potential problems in the workplace. And the next thing you know, you're downgrading someone's performance. When in fact, if you had interceded and maybe listened 6 months ago, you could have offered them an alternate work schedule or done something that would have been helpful to them so that they could maintain their dignity, maintain their presence, maintain their ability to contribute and be productive at work. So this transformation, I think, for folks can be a super important thing. And I think empathy, compassion, and understanding your own limitations, which I'll now ask you both about. Like, I think as an early leader, I thought I was good at everything. And the longer I lead, the longer I've been around, I'm actually good at a handful of things, like really, really good. I need help with a bunch of other stuff, which is why as a business owner now, I have to hire people that fill the gaps that I don't possess. Like I'm not great at everything. News to MK. Talk a little bit about how you determine like what your special thing is, what your special skill set. I think everybody has a thing that from a leadership standpoint is the thing that they happen to be particularly good at. It could be being task oriented and just, I call it the GSD theory. Like I'm good at getting stuff done at the end of the day. And when people hire me or when they bring me to the table, they know that guy's going to get that done. Because that is how I've lived myself professionally. What's your thing, Addie? Starting with you, what's your thing that like when people deal with you, they got to understand this is what they're getting?
I think if I had to pick one thing, I would pick, getting vision and bring it to reality, make it reality. And not just a dream, but getting it, truly to life. By the way, this podcast is the proof. And Dave knows that my vision, we discussed about it a few months ago. This is really for me the vision coming to life. Because I'm, as I said, to Dave, and people know me well, I'm a big dreamer, but in a
Yeah.
positive way. Like when I know, in my head.
Dreaming's always positive, Addy. Don't
Yeah.
caveat it like that.
Yeah, and the thing is, sometimes to take the dream and really get it to reality. So that's, I know, something very strong with me. When I have a vision and I, present it to my team, even though sometimes it looks like bizarre in the first, moments, and they look at me like, oh, where did he come from with it? But I think since I'm like you, MK, you said, very here and now, I know how to do stuff and to run stuff. So they very fast, very, very fast see that this dream can come to life. I think this is something that I'm very strong at, hopefully until, also to the next challenges of my life.
Yeah, outstanding. Dave, what's your
Yeah,
special
no,
sauce, man?
Yeah, so I'll just say this. I know Adi's a dreamer. He's a writer, he's a musician, he's a businessman, he's a diplomat, he's phenomenal partner. And he and I came together with this dream we'll talk about here later. But one of my superpowers that I get oftentimes made fun of by subordinates and even my family is I've been called a taskmaster because not because I am a hard whip wielding person, but I, from my aviation days, checklists are vital. For me, checklists in the
Yeah.
aviation world, they keep you alive. If you don't follow everything on the checklist, you might miss something and it could kill you. So I always have checklists of once that dream is sort of set out, we know what we want to do, identify the tasks to get us there. People who work for me know I will always ask them, "Hey, where are you on this?" They know that they're not just going to be able to slide by. Sometimes they're different colors, and I've had people come up to me years later say, "Hey, you're still putting your tasks in different colors as for priority." So that's my special power is checklists. I keep people on task. I keep myself on task. And my wife, to her chagrin, keep her on task, and she does not like that very much. But
And
yeah,
MK, I gotta add, we got some kind of situation where now I know when I send presentation to Dave. By the way, I think that we are both not very strong at presentation, but I right now know which slides he will write me 15 and 18. I see something wrong. I know now for sure. Yeah.
there you go.
This is the
Yeah,
kind
There you
of
go.
Dave has reminded me as well in our recent communication that he's an attention to detail kind of guy, which is absolutely needed. Which is why I love him, and I love the idea of collaborating with you guys. And let's get into how I think we can collaborate here in the future. So Apogee operates a speakers bureau. When I was thinking about sort of assembling my team of consultants, I reached out to Dave and had a conversation with him. And he got me up to speed on not only his recent experiences, but the experience of having worked with you and this idea that you guys were going to develop a lecture series to talk about some of your recent experiences. You don't have to be a historian to know that the world shifted. It's not only for the country or state of Israel on October 7th, but really for that region of the world. And we've been, as a global culture, sort of dealing with the effects of that since then. You guys have gone into business together. You're now providing some insights into your experiences. Adi, you mentioned you're an expert negotiator. Dave, we know about your experience in the counterterrorism realm. Talk a little bit about this lecture series, what you hope people will glean from it, and maybe at a top level, like why you think it's important to get out and talk about this this important topic. And again, all around the enterprise risk circle. Yeah.
Well, I can say, first of all, it's interesting, gotta say, I mean, I'm not having now this advertising, but I think that what happened after October 7th and the negotiation that we faced, it was something really in large scale that I can't remember, and I was in this field, as I said before. It was something very challenging, very large scale, in a variety of hostages. So it's something even, first of all, it's very interesting to understand how we have to face this chaotic situation after October 7th, which, for the American audience, people who are not maybe aware, the only equivalent that I can think about is September 11th, which was a tragedy, in the heart of the
Right.
nation. So this is the equivalent of what happened in Israel. And so first of all, it's really something that we faced something very, very new, even for us. And as you know, we've been in the counterterrorism area all the time. So this is one thing. But what we emphasize in this lecture, and by the way, we do it with the two perspectives, the American perspective and the Israeli perspective. That's why it's so interesting. We talk about the negotiation, for example, and we explain what's negotiation at its best. How should it look like? Because especially when it's challenging situation like that, if you don't follow things that you've learned throughout the years, if you don't stick to some methods, so you can miss a lot of things. And I can just give one or two examples. For example, when I talked about active listening, or, to ask open questions, or to frame things the right way, or how to make the other side make moves towards you when you expect things to be done. And, or another thing, for example, when we talk about culture, and the meaning of language in a culture, and what is subculture like Islamic resistance. Because when you face a negotiation with an enemy which is rooted in a DNA of Islamic resistance, if you want to understand his principles, what's leading him in the negotiation, you won't be able to solve and to get to the best outcome that you can get in a negotiation. And as I said, it's complicated in any parameter that you can even think about. So what we give in this lecture, a glimpse of how it looks like. And since we, collaborated, Israel and the US was the most tight collaborator that I can think about. And we couldn't done it, by the way, without the support of the US. And, we even mentioned in the lecture the one word which has so importance, don't. The Biden's word don't, which affected the whole nation, especially when we were after trauma, a few days after the trauma. So we give the whole story, but we give the professionals, the professional issues into it. And I think it's very inspiring and very teaching, especially when you have so many elements in a good and very professional negotiation. And I'll hand it now to Dave to complete his side of it.
No, he nailed it. October 7th was the 9/11 for Israel. It worse than 9/11. But Malcolm, you and I both, we were both in the service of the FBI during 9/11. For us, there was before 9/11 and after 9/11. The world completely changed. I would venture to say October 7th was a global event. It changed everything. The rise in anti-Semitism is a great example. The attention coming to the region is another example. No other countries faced what Israel faced, and as Adi said, the United States provided full support from the president of the United States, both Biden and President Trump, all the way down to the lowest level of a government employee that was supportive of our efforts. And so the presentation we give, the lecture we give, is illuminating, it's educating, it gives people an understanding of this global event and, of course, the aftermath. But it also provides lessons. Dee is an expert in the negotiation field. I am a certified crisis manager for the FBI. We talk about some of those different aspects. And whether you're a business that wants to learn about how to negotiate business deals or deal with crisis, or you're a local community that wants to hear about this to be educated, I think there's something in it for everybody. And we talk about the leadership lessons, some of the things we discuss from the different perspectives. Some of my work, my last 11 months in Israel after October 7th was focused completely on the hostage crisis, which is why I worked so closely with Adi. And some of the things that we dealt with, I worked with, for instance, young IDF officers that were dealing with hostage families. And I can tell you, hostage families, very emotional, and nobody wants to be in their shoes. And sometimes you have very, very difficult conversations with them. And I remember mentoring some IDF colleagues to say, don't take this personally. You have to understand where these hostage families are coming from. And so there are leadership lessons there as well that we discuss in the presentation. So I think it's a lecture series that could lead into workshops. It could lead into consults for companies and for communities. And I think we're very excited that you're giving us the opportunity to talk about it. Very excited to work together, provide these two different perspectives. The presentation, has been my portion of it has been approved by the FBI, so I feel very comfortable and confident going out and talking about the FBI's role because I've been given that permission to do so, and I think it's important that it be heard. It's like I said, such a global event. People need to understand history so that we don't repeat it.
And if
Yes,
I may,
yeah, absolutely. Go.
just a second, yeah, and I think it's emphasize also and highlight two elements which are very crucial for leaders: adaptability and being agile. Because I think this is the kind of things that if you don't, especially in this era, we're in a pace of change which is enormous. Things changing on a daily basis, and this is what we've learned from October 7th, and not just. And it's related to how to lead and how to manage. You got to adapt yourself with humility, but you got to adapt yourself and to build a team that has the resilience also to be adapting, to being agile, and to know that it has to change very often. Something that wasn't, when we started as leaders, I don't think it was as this, time with the AI era, etc., and a young generation. So I think it's very crucial also as elements for the leaders as well.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that, for the listeners, especially those in the corporate setting, I think it would be a complete miss to assume that this content is only relevant for folks who are into sort of the high speed, public service environment. The lessons that you talked about, even there's the topic matter that you've touched upon, the crisis management, Dave, from your aspect, negotiations, Adi, from your aspect, all of which are applicable in business and corporate environments. I think there are lessons to be learned. And what I would ask people to do as they think about, contemplating bringing you guys in is abstract yourself from the political narrative and some of the other very, very intentional, tense things about the situation. There are learning objectives and things that can be extracted from that experience. I think that can be applied in various aspects of not only corporate settings, but any setting where the safety of people is involved, where there's an idea, both passionate and dispassionate, about like what outcomes need to occur, and like what you're going to give up in order to get to an end state that's acceptable to both sides. All critical stuff. I want to make sure that people are viewing this topic in a way that that ensures that the learning lessons to be gleaned from this don't get shrouded by some of the concerns that folks have from a political standpoint about the topic matter. I just think it's super interesting. It's why I'm supporting making sure that we can evangelize and get you guys out on the street. And I know folks are going to benefit from hearing this message. Any final thoughts from you both on leadership? What do you want to leave folks with in terms of the topic, the discipline, things that you've learned over time that have been comforting to you or helpful? Dave, why don't we start with you? Any final words on the topic of leadership?
It's so important. Obviously, we've all experienced bad leadership. We've all experienced good leadership. One of my early experiences was on the cyber squad, and our supervisor in the FBI had no cyber experience, but he was a leader. He knew us. He talked to us. He knew our family. He cared about us. He made sure we were able to get the job done. We made him look good. It was just a wonderful relationship all the way around. It's so important. Leadership is so important. One bit of advice I give my kids, I got it from my father, who's a mentor to me, a hero to me. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you have to be the hardest worker. And, if you can instill in your folks to work hard and you can set that example as a hard worker, you will find that your folks will be successful and you'll get the mission accomplished. So,
all right.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd like to highlight, the mentorship element, which is always, being a part of how I manage, how I operate. I've always, believe that a good leaders, are judged not by what they're doing right now, but also by the people they raise. And this is your legacy, literally after you leave, your position. And seeing someone, by the way, that you mentored succeed in a leadership role, well, there's nothing, that more rewarding for me. Somehow like a dad, that sees his son, growing up. So for me, it's something very, very important.
Yeah, I think great comments by you both, and definitely adding your point around the rewards, the internal reward that you get from seeing someone succeed and knowing that even if you've played a small role in that person's transformation or their ability to achieve something that's important to them, it's extremely rewarding. And I think one of the best aspects of what you get from a service-oriented leadership, a people-centered leadership perspective. Hey, I want to thank you both for this conversation. Again, David Zimmermann, Adi, Rotem. I hope that people come to our website, bring these guys into your corporate environment to give a talk on their experiences in the crisis management and negotiations realm. But also, you're getting a couple of leaders here that I think have some valuable experiences that can translate to business and to folks from a personal nature. Thank you both for coming in.
And this is an opportunity once again to thank you very much, MK. And what you're doing is the example of leadership. Everything that you do in this podcast and what you write, we're really after it. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for this episode of Amplified, the Leadership Student 2.0 podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to Amplified, the Leadership Student 2.0 podcast. If you're ready to elevate your personal leadership and drive your team's success, connect with Apogee Global RMS for custom coaching and development solutions. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of impactful personal leadership strategies. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and empowering those around you. Together, we'll amplify your success